Streaming at SuperTalk.fm, SuperTalk TV, and of course on your SuperTalk Mississippi radio stations. All guests join us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team, Mississippi Farm Bureau. Matt Moscona, live and in the flesh from Baton Rouge, joins us this afternoon. We both have our old school earbuds in. Hopefully that helps with our audio quality. Good to see you, my friend.
It's always wonderful to see you as well. I feel like you and I have talked this week, mostly because I dug up an old clip from you from SEC Media Days that I've referenced on my show probably 24 times.
Well, I'm glad. I actually went back and watched what you posted. I was like, hey, that kind of made me sound smart. What I'm wondering is if you have made yourself sound smart this week. Is guarantee the right word? You feel extremely confident that LSU is beating Ole Miss. I think on Twitter you said I said it last week. I'm saying it today. I'm going to say it again Friday when I make my picks. There's no ambiguity here for you with this game. What gives?
I just think LSU's going to win the game.
Why?
I mean, we can go through it, but I'm a little surprised at how much it's Joe Namath, Super Bowl III. That's not a guarantee. I mean, of course Ole Miss can win the game. I'm not waffling. I'm picking LSU to win the game, but what I didn't want is people to assume recency bias because of LSU's win over Florida. Mm-hmm. I think I know a lot about this LSU team. I think we all do. We know where their flaws are. We know where their strengths are. And more importantly, I know how LSU is going to respond in a tough situation. Listen, LSU is not a perfect team, and they have serious drawbacks. But I also know what their Achilles heel is that teams can expose. I'm not sure Ole Miss can expose, and that's the fact that if you have really good players on the outside, LSU cannot guard you. LSU's corners are not good enough. I mean, Richard, we've seen over the years, LSU has earned the DBU designation, right?
Sure.
When LSU could put Stingley or Ricks or Tre'Davious White or one of those guys, Patrick Peterson, I like my guy against yours. I don't care who your guy is. I like my guy. This team can't do that. And they got exposed by a really good Tennessee team. I don't know that I believe Ole Miss's receivers are so good that LSU has to respect them with numbers, which would leave them vulnerable in the defensive front. So I think, and I've seen Ole Miss go into these long lulls offensively. Vanderbilt led 20-10. Kentucky held Ole Miss to 3 points in the second half. I've seen those lulls, and I know how LSU responds when those things happen. So I think at home, I think LSU's going to win the game. I do.
So you point out the DB wide receiver matchup. To me, I look at LSU and I see other areas that strike me as concerning. I feel like maybe offensive line has gotten better than it was earlier in the year. Defensive line may be a little bit healthier than it was earlier in the year, but I don't see a lot of depth in either of those areas. Am I wrong there?
No, the big concern so Mason Smith on the defensive line, I'll go to offensive line in a second, but on the defensive line, we would have had a legit conversation if you and I were talking back in July or even in August, that wide receiver on offense, defensive line on defense, the unquestioned strengths. LSU's defensive front is very good. B.J. Ojulari is a potential first-round pick. He may end up playing his way into round one. Ali Gay is a veteran player who's very good at the other end. They've developed some depth at end. Mason Smith is the guy, though, that we were talking about, former five-star defensive tackle. He's a freak. And he tore his ACL in the first defensive series of the season. So they've replaced him with Mekhi Wingo, who's a very different type of player, but he was a freshman All-SEC last year at Missouri. He is a small, low-to-the-ground, blow-up-the-launch-pad type guy, but different. Jaquelin Roy is very good. And I'm not just trying to write off names, but after that, at tackle on the interior, you probably got three guys that you can rotate on the interior. And after that, it's a big, giant question mark. So if Ole Miss gets into a spot where they run the ball 70 times, brother, that's a problem. So LSU is going to need to get off the field because you're right. Defensive depth on the defensive line is a problem.
So I look at what Ole Miss does offensively. And you and I, we talked about what the perfect scenario was for this Ole Miss team. And it was kind of the schedule, the way it was built. Because there are a lot of people like, well, Ole Miss hadn't played anybody. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't think it's entirely fair because I think Kentucky's better, but because They made some mistakes at the end, and then they lost to South Carolina. People are like, Kentucky was the 7th-ranked team in the country. Yeah, whether they deserve to be that or not, I don't know. This team needed to grow, though, through the first half of the season, and I think they've done that. But the bottom line is they run the heck out of the football, and it doesn't seem to matter. Vanderbilt really loaded up on the run. They're like, we're not going to let you beat us this way, as much as Vanderbilt can say that. And then Ole Miss was like, oh, okay, we'll throw it. So I've said this to a couple of people, and I'm curious how you might respond to it. Lane Kiffin, he is a lot of things. Stubborn, he is not. Like, if something's working, you've got coaches out there that are like, okay, that was working. Now let me show you how smart I am, because we're going to do this. That's not what Lane Kiffin does. They're running the ball for 6 yards a carry. He doesn't care if they throw it 19 times in a game. Is Ole Miss going to find that in any facet of their offense? Well, they're able to run it, so they're just going to keep pounding it. Or they're going to be able to throw it, so they just keep throwing it based on what you've seen.
Yeah, so I'm not telling you that LSU's pitching a shutout. I'm not telling you Ole Miss is coming there and they're not moving the ball. I think they will. I think for LSU, a key is, can you get enough stops and keep giving the ball back to your offense to where eventually they break through, and when they do, they're a lot to deal with because they have really good guys on the outside. So I do think LSU in this game is talented enough in the defensive front, especially at linebacker, where they're athletic and they can run sideline to sideline, and they do have numbers to where they will tackle. I mean, a see-ball, hit-ball type opportunity suits this defense, even if it's running in pursuit, which I think they will. If it's kind of how LSU's linebackers are built. If you want to play this game, in the box, even stretching, it's how LSU's kind of built to defend. So this is a matchup that I'm like, okay. Now, it was similar last week against Florida, to be honest. Richardson has really struggled to throw the ball. He hit the big one deep on the second play of the game to Shorter, and that was really it. But all Florida really got was, look, they got a couple of busted plays, but one of them was Richardson going 81 yards when he just
LSU just decided tackling was optional on that run.
Bro, how bizarre was that play? And it wasn't like, and Richard, it wasn't like that was just some guys. Like, that was Micah Baskerville, that was Greg Brooks, that was Jay Ward. That's like some of your best players. Yeah. That were like, oh, I'm going to strip the ball instead of just getting this dude on the ground. Anyway, listen, I have so much respect for Lane Kiffin. Like, I think I told you, I wanted LSU to hire Lane Kiffin last year. He's a brilliant offensive guy, and I think there's a lot of skill in that offense, and they're going to cause problems. Like, Judkins is going to be a problem. Zach Evans is obvious. I mean, everybody knows him from recruiting. Ole Miss is going to make plays. I don't doubt that at all. They're going to move the ball, but I think I've seen this with LSU enough. They're going to get enough stops. They're going to force some turnovers, and the offense is going to be able to take advantage because there's enough playmakers. I mean, I just think it's a game where I know how LSU is going to respond in a tight situation. I don't yet know how LSU is going to respond. Like, Richard, I think this is a game in the 30s. So I'm not telling you I think you're going to see a repeat of the Kentucky game. I think you're going to see a game in the 30s where it's going to come down to who can get a few more stops.
So there are a couple of things that, and we'll take a timeout in a minute. Obviously, special teams has been a huge Achilles heel for LSU. Muff punts. We saw it in the opener against Florida State. We saw it against Tennessee. I mean, you would like to think that there comes a point where it's like, all right, we've hit the quota on bad special teams plays. Is that a thing, or is it still a problem?
Oh, it's a problem, and it'll be a problem on Saturday. It's head scratching because, look, it's one thing if, like, you're missing kicks and you just need to recruit a kicker, right? Like that can be solved in recruiting. LSU's problems have been in every phase. It doesn't matter if it's kicking, punting, punt coverage, kick coverage, alignment. Every game, something new pops up. Against Auburn, they had 4 special teams penalties in the first half. Like, every time there was a special teams play, they committed a penalty. In the fourth quarter against Florida, they had an illegal formation on a punt. The opening kickoff of the game, they allowed a 47-yard kickoff return. They don't have the guy that can just blast the ball through the end zone, so it's a touchback every time. And coverage units and staying in lanes have been a problem. Like, there are yards and plays to be had. They tried angle kicking last week, and maybe that worked. We'll see. But they're chasing their tail a little bit on special teams. And if you have a heady special teams coach that can give LSU a look, they haven't seen. I don't think they're prepared for it. I think Brian Polian is proving to be the worst hire among Brian Kelly's staff. And boy, I'm not a fire the coach guy. I've never been. I'm not the guy who calls for people's jobs or anything. It's just really hard for me to imagine him being back next year. That's how badly it's gone.
I wonder if Ole Miss would roll out an onside kick in consecutive weeks.
Dude,
that was a big play in the game against Auburn.
It was massive because they stole a possession, and I had Auburn plus 15.5. So that I was not happy.
Living right.
I still covered, but I was not happy about the onside kick when it happened.
Visiting with Matt Moscona from ESPN, however you want to describe it. It is my favorite place in the world to watch a football game, and I don't mind saying that. Never have. Just a great spot. Is it the home field advantage that it once was?
Sometimes. I think LSU's got the same problem that a lot of places have. I think you could ask that question to Tennessee, but then you look at Saturday and you go, that was a big advantage.
Yeah, it was.
So I think in spots, LSU is still that. When you get the right opponent coming through, a winning football team, a good opponent, the perfect storm, all that stuff, it's everything Death Valley is and always has been. The problem is LSU got caught up in the arms race that so many other schools did of stadium expansion, and they grew it to 102,000. I've always said it's equivalent to like buying a fleet of horses the day the Model T was invented. Like you went and bought 100 CDs the day that Napster came out. Sorry, like you kind of missed it. So the LSU has the same problems everybody has. Stadium's too big, so it's expensive. Park, traffic's awful. Home experience is too good. So when LSU, look, man, Mississippi State came rolling through here. You probably had 20,000 empty seats. Southern comes rolling through here. New Mexico. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
Saturday is going to be really good. You get a top 10 Ole Miss team coming in. There's a lot. It's going to be a beautiful day. People are excited after the Florida win. Saturday's going to be fun. Saturday is going to be a really good environment.
So Matt, I've been to a bunch of Ole Miss LSU games in Baton Rouge. And I said it a second ago. I mean, there's nothing I think that compares to it in college football, especially being on the field. I mean, I've had the cool vantage point of being on the field a bunch of times there. The experience in 2014 was different than all of the times I had been there previously, right? Because Ole Miss came in top 5 in the country with a 3 next to their name, low-scoring game, and I had never seen Tiger Stadium like that. I had seen it like if I was watching an LSU game against Alabama, an LSU game against Florida or Auburn or whatever through the years. Do LSU fans see that number next to Ole Miss's game and go, okay, this isn't just another, hey, Ole Miss is coming to town and it was a great rivalry in the 60s. This is it's our time to help.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons, honestly, why a lot of fans have some anxiety about the game to begin with. Whereas, and I'll tell you, man, the conversation I referenced in the last segment that you and I had, I don't know if you really remember doing the interview at Media Days, but like you and I were sitting there and you started talking. I asked you about the schedule and you kind of started talking me through it, and I pulled it up. And then you laughed at me because it was the first time I had actually looked at the schedule. You're like, it's 6 weeks to the season, and this is the first time you're looking at Ole Miss's schedule. Well, it was. And it just it started firing. And I was like, Ole Miss is going to be 7-0 when they come to Baton Rouge. I mean, they beat Kentucky. They're 7-0 when they come to Baton Rouge.
Right, and that was the only question.
And it was. And they did, and they are. So I'm not surprised. And Ole Miss's ranking is warranted. I mean, they've won there's only 9 teams in college football that have won all their games.
But you very definitively said this is not the 7th best team in the country.
And I believe that. And I think when you look at the remaining 5 games.
Could Saturday change your mind?
No, because LSU is not a great team either. Beating LSU wouldn't change my mind. If you beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa or in Oxford, I'd change my mind.
That brings up I'm derailing your conversation.
No, go ahead.
I love when we just talk back and forth. So I was doing an interview last week with Cole Kubelik and Greg McElroy on their show. And Greg asked me, he's like, when are we really going to know about this team? And I said, well, it's funny you asked that question. So let's say they beat Auburn, which they did. That doesn't make you know anything more. Let's say they beat LSU. You go, well, that was a down LSU team. What if they win in College Station? Well, they can't score. What if they then lose by 2 or 3 touchdowns at home to Alabama? Does that mean they're a bad team? Well, no. Okay. So what if they go to Arkansas? Well, Arkansas up and it's like you don't know. So at some point you're like, I mean, they are what their record says they are.
So here's what I would respond to. When you're talking about a team ranked 7th, and at this point in the season, where we're now late October, and you're undefeated, and you are if college football playoff rankings came out today, Ole Miss fans are watching with intent.
No doubt.
Because you're in the conversation. So when does that change? Well, it changes when you lose. And that's why, like, if you're having a different conversation about, okay, well, is this a college football playoff team today? Today, you have to respect that conversation. LSU can't have that conversation. They've lost 2 games. That's over. That's not even in the realm. The question is, this Ole Miss team, do I believe today that when those final rankings come out before, after the championship weekend, do I think Ole Miss is going to be in the top 10? I do not. What I think Ole Miss can be is a team that over this stretch of 5 games finishes 9-3, wins a bowl game, and goes 10-3 again. And the conversation you and I were having in July was, and I think I asked you the question, was, okay, now that Matt Corral's gone, who, what did you say, might be the greatest quarterback at Ole Miss, not named Manning. I think is how you said it. And I might agree with you. Like, it's a conversation. Can Lane continue, regardless of turnover players, to put Ole Miss in that conversation year after year after year? This is one of those years where they prove it, right? So back to the point about what this Ole Miss team is, we'll find out in time as it goes. But
and
as of right now,
theoretically should have been a down year.
Sure,
but the schedule has helped it not necessarily be that.
Schedule has helped. Transfer portal obviously helps. You bring in Jackson Dart, and he's your starting quarterback. He's played really well. But let's also wait and have this conversation over these next 5 games. I asked an odds maker yesterday, Ole Miss's remaining 5, the only one they'll be favored today, right? Point spread values change based on results of games. But today, the only one Ole Miss would be favored is the Egg Bowl by 3. They'd be an underdog in all the rest of their games. It's not to say you're going to lose all those games. But, I mean.
Which is crazy, because if you had asked that question a week ago, he would have said probably favored against LSU based on what they had done so far. Maybe favored against A&M. We'll see what they do against South Carolina, because they hadn't shown you anything.
Yeah.
Arkansas without KJ Jefferson, you're probably favored against them. Egg Bowl would have been tighter than it would have been a week ago.
Without KJ, Arkansas is a completely different team. I mean, I think we would agree with that. He's just he makes everything they do offensively go, and their defense stinks. Yeah. By the way, I don't think Ole Miss is losing all 5 games. I don't think they're going 1-4 in the 5 games. I think minimum they get 2. I think best case you probably get 3 of them and go 10-2, which would be, I think, an incredible year. You're in the New Year 6. Again, if you're 10, you're probably back-to-back Sugar Bowls.
Yeah.
But I don't think at the end of the year we're going to be talking about Ole Miss as an undefeated or top 10 team in the country. That's my opinion. Hey, look, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. If I'm wrong, laugh at me.
Yeah.
I've seen lulls offensively. I have seen, and maybe that's a product, and I'll grant you this, Richard. Maybe that's a product of, all right, you're playing Tulsa and you got the game in hand, and so you just kind of go to sleep for a half. Happens. You're up 21 at Auburn, so you let your guard down. Happens. But I'll tell you
in
this.
fairness, they have not been a game where they had to go play a 4-quarter game. That hasn't happened this season.
And the reason
outside of Kentucky, and they had to make plays at the end, and they made plays at the end.
And a big reason I like LSU this weekend is because I feel like I know what they're going to do in a 4-quarter game, because they've been in one every single game. This is a very comfortable spot for LSU.
Jaden Daniels showed me something last week. I mean, obviously 6 touchdowns, but he kind of let it rip in terms of throwing the ball. Why should I believe that he's going to do that 2 weeks in a row, and he's not going to be a roller coaster, kind of like his entire career has been?
So he was the guy that let it rip at Arizona State. And last year, look, I think we've all now seen Arizona State a little bit of a mess, right? I mean, Herm got fired. A lot of a mess. His best receivers transferred out. and he probably felt like he had to do too much. 10 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Came into this season, and I think realized he just wasn't going to turn the ball over, so he didn't. He did not throw an interception until the final play against Tennessee when he kept going into the end zone. And that's a process, man. Look, a big part of that, I think, is new offensive coordinator, new terminology, new receivers, trusting guys. Look, if you want to comp, Ole Miss, Lane used those first 3 games to figure that out with his quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Who do I want? It was a feeling out. But as a criticism, it's very valid. Jaden was way too hesitant. I started telling you the undeniable strength of this team is LSU's receivers, and they didn't utilize it. The fact that Kayshon Boutte through 5 games had 97 yards receiving and no touchdowns is absurd. Yep. It's just absurd.
Is he now fully engaged? Because it certainly didn't look that way early.
He was never disengaged. I know that's going to sound funny, but I think fan narratives sometimes get built, and then fans will use any ancillary info or things that they see. I'll give you an example. They were playing against Auburn, and the cameras cut to a shot where Jaden Daniels is Kayshon sitting on the bench and Jaden standing behind him, kind of talking in his ear, and fans go, "Oh, he's melting." Maybe those dudes are talking about what they're having for dinner. You don't really know, but if you've convinced yourself of a narrative, you'll take anything and spin it to support that narrative. I'll tell you, Richard, just talking to coaches and players and family of players and people inside of that building. And
hey, I'm going to interrupt. Hold that thought. We have Richard Cross, Matt Moscona, ESPN Baton Rouge. You can check out his radio show, podcast, Instagram, Twitter. It's all there, and it's worth the follow. If nothing else, it'll make you laugh. You'll laugh at him, you'll laugh with him, but you'll laugh. You were talking before the break about Kayshon Boutte, his level of engagement, what fans see, what they think they know based on something that they see. Tell me more.
Yeah, I warned you, long-winded radio guy. Sorry.
Happens.
The point with Kayshon is he has been engaged all year. Does he want the ball more? Absolutely. I think there's probably some frustration there, wanting to do more, help more. But Brian Kelly named him a captain last week because of how he practiced. Every time you talk to anybody within the program, they all say the same thing. He's engaged. He comes to practice every day. He works hard. He's glad they're winning. Every receiver wants the ball more, and I want receivers that want the ball more. But I really genuinely Richard, you know me well enough, man. I would tell you if I thought it was different. I really don't think it's different. I think you have a guy that everyone is surprised that the numbers aren't there when he's been so dynamic. Nobody knows that better than Ole Miss. The 2020 game was his breakout game. When he set a single game receiving record.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about that. I don't know what
bro, that was about. I don't look, man, as good as
278. Is it that big?
No, he went over 300 that day. Yeah, Josh Reed had the record at 292. Kayshon went over 300.
I made reference a number of times to Kayshon Boutte is still open on that 15-yard dig route, and there's a run after the catch. He was. But it wasn't just him. It was the fact that Ole Miss had zero ability to get pressure on the quarterback, and so able to stand back there all day long.
Look, Kayshon's a great player. He's still going to be a first-round pick. They needed to get him involved. They did. But it was just him. What you saw, and I think you referenced this, was they started throwing 50-50 balls, and they've got, LSU's wide receivers are a problem. I know Ole Miss has 2 corners they really like. LSU's got 7 receivers they really like. You can't guard them all. And if Jaden is willing to be patient in the pocket and find the open guy, they're a problem, man. And they were for Florida.
See, that might be the biggest key to me in this game. Because is Ole Miss going to go 3 down linemen, which is kind of their base? Are they going to go to 4? And Cedric Johnson, who didn't play last week, is he going to play? Because he does 2 things. One, he's got the ability to go get the passer, and I don't care who the passer is. And number 2, he's got the ability to set the edge, which kind of funnels that run game back to the inside a little bit. They didn't have that last week. And I think that's a big part of the reason that Auburn went for 300 on the ground.
I agree. LSU's not going to run for 300 yards. I don't know that they're capable. I don't think it's what they do or what they want to do. LSU does get Armani Goodwin back this week. He was their leading rusher when he got hurt against Auburn, hurt his hamstring. Against New Mexico. Hurt his hamstring. He's been out for about a month. He'll be back. But if you're looking for an X factor, it's Jaden Daniels' feet, man. He has the ability, and if I were an opposing fan, I would tell you, we've all watched our teams in games like this. It's a frustrating ability where you feel like you've got a guy bottled up, like you've called the right defense, you've made the right play, but the really athletic guy just makes a better play and moves the sticks.
Yeah.
And Jaden has done that all year long. And if that's the last resort, that's how they'll move the sticks. And they're going to move the ball. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score. And I think it's going to be a really good game. And I really do. I think we're going to have a fun game.
Do we need to like stake bet on this or anything?
Well, we can just go eat a steak, but we could certainly stake bet if you want. I mean, I would love to do that. My best stake bet right now, bro, is I don't know if you know Josh Bertaccini. He does radio up in Arkansas. And at the end of last season, he was convinced KJ Jefferson was going to be a Heisman candidate. And I just laughed him off completely. Yeah, look at your face, exactly, because you're a sane human. And he bet me a KJ Jefferson Heisman bet. It was if KJ is in New York, then I have to fly us up there, get hotels, all that stuff. And if he's not, then Josh has to buy me like a really expensive steak dinner. I'm like, okay, has there ever been an easier bet in the history of mankind?
I'll take it.
Right?
I'll take it.
So I'm always down for
Can
a
I
good
take it on
wager.
two sides? I don't know. Maybe we just ought to eat a steak, and then one of us will tell the other how wrong we were. How about that?
Oh, fair enough. I'm sure we'll do that in July.